Drop it. Power panel. Joe Sanberg, Cenk Uygur, Iadarola. Good to have you, Joe.
Good to be here.
All right, amazing, fascinating show today. The president almost certainly committed a crime, and prosecutors know it, and it does not lead the show. I mean, we are so used. The president with an obvious, preposterous lie.
Yeah.
We won't even get to it until the second hour. Okay, provable lie. We're going to show it to you, him saying one thing and then him saying the other about an incredibly important topic. In fact, on the topic of his criminal prosecution. It's like the 8th story in the show, right? Like things are happening so quick, so fervently, and so important. Every one of these stories, including one that TYT Investigates broke about Mark Whitaker. So that's the guy who is now the acting attorney general. And they did a wonderful research into his background, and you're going to find out all about that as well. But with all that being said, I'm going to start with something super fun and goofy because I like to. I'm going to go with the poll, guys. TYT.com/poll, and there's a very specific reason why. Bernie Sanders is later in the program as well. An incredible smear against him. Do not miss that. That is amazing, and that is of course by other Democrats in the media. Unsurprising. So we've been asking you guys which of these different designs, all from our fans, that you like the most, so that we can make a T-shirt out of it. Okay, and
oh, that's hard.
It is really hard. Oh. In fact, you guys think it's hard.
No, the Bernie one.
Because
I don't know.
Space Invaders came out guns blazing, or whatever it is that you do on space. Laser blazing. Anyway, but now in first place is We Can Do It with Anna.
Nice.
Hold. And Bernie won Kenobi. They are tied at 405 votes apiece. Wow. But we will not do a recount. Okay, I'm kidding.
that as much as I got annoyed by the tick 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 tick. That's a really good design for it.
Yeah, and so that is trailing. That's in third place. Space Invaders has fallen to fourth place. Anyway, TYT.com/poll. We're gonna close it at some point. I don't know, probably soon, and then we'll make the shirt, and then you guys can buy it on shoptyt.com. But it's all designed by you guys. It's voted on by you guys, so it's your shirt, okay? And then it'll be paid by you guys. Okay, all right, but huge stories, including Florida, which I appear to be in a good and jovial mood, and I am. But there'll be some rage in that story.
Wait, so you alluded to some big thing that was going to annoy me, but then you didn't actually say it.
No, that's later in the program when we've been doing the challenge on who can sign up more members. Maybe we should get you at tyt.com/Joe. You turn on that aspiration thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're goners. But anyway.
Okay, so tune in for me being annoyed later.
Yeah, so John and I are neck and neck. We're in second, third place. Of course, in first place is Anna. She's signing up the most members through tyt.com/Anna.
That's not fair.
She's invited to participate in this competition.
I know. We got to get you in. We got to get you in. All right. We invited in Jimmy late, and now he's in fourth place in closing. Okay. So let's see how it turns out. Well, all right, let's get to it though. Let's do the stories.
It'll be interesting to see if anyone can beat Anna at this point. Okay, let's do it. Right now, some of the most high-profile races in this midterm season are still up in the air, with ballots being counted and, in many cases, recounts basically assured at this point. And while this is happening, Republicans, including the president and the governor of Florida, concerning his own race, mind you, are alleging that there is voter fraud going on, although they have yet to give any evidence whatsoever about how that's actually happening. So first I wanna let you know about how close these races actually are, why this big thing is going on, why legal challenges are going forward, crazy conspiratorial tweets are being tweeted. So over in Arizona, Representative Kristen Sinema is ahead of Representative Martha McSally by a mere 2,000 votes. I think right now that's actually more around 9,000 votes, but it's still pretty close. Florida Governor Rick Scott leads incumbent Senator Bill Nelson by about 15,000 votes for the Senate seat. I believe that's 0.18%, which is very, very close indeed. Still in Florida, Representative Ron DeSantis, whom the AP declared the winner in his race, is ahead of Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum by about 35,000 votes in the Florida governor's race. And nearby in Georgia, Secretary of State Brian Kemp is ahead of former State House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams by 63,000 votes in the governor's race there. So understand that votes are still being counted. These are provisional ballots that are being confirmed or mail-in ballots that are arriving. We don't normally really care about those votes that much because generally the difference between the two top candidates is large enough that those would not be able to swing the result. But in these cases where you have a number of races that are within a fraction of 1 percentage point, they are potentially enough to actually swing it. As we saw in Arizona, where Kristen Sinema, who was down at one point, has now taken the lead with some of those other ballots coming in. At the same time, some of these have already been called for recounts. That's Stacey Abrams is calling for a recount. There's still counting going on in Florida. And even though technically Andrew Gillum did concede, he's now saying that he wants every vote to be counted, which seems reasonable since we live in a democracy. Despite all of this, we're gonna have some accusations of fraud and things like that. But are you at all surprised that we were a little bit depressed on election day? Some of these races are the ones we were watching the closest. And in pretty much every case since the election day, further developments have been beneficial to the Democrats, whether it's flipped a district or just brought it closer.
Yeah, and no, I was surprised by one, just because of the size of it, which was Connecticut. I thought Ned Lamont had already lost, and it turns out he came back and won. And so, but you guys have to understand something that we emphasize on every election night, so it's not like we're doing it now because of the story, that when people are coming from behind, they're not actually coming from behind. Exactly. It's the counting that's coming from behind. They all voted at the same time, right? So now, I give you a perfect case in Florida. So that's the one that's the most contentious. Now they've, Trump, of course, has a wild conspiracy theory about it, which we'll get to in a second. But they say, well, this is so crazy. Most of the votes coming in from Broward County, which is the latest in counting, are almost all coming in for the Democrats, Gillum and Bill Nelson. Well, that's true. The Gillum is getting 68% of the vote in Broward County, and Nelson's getting 69.1% of the vote in Broward County. You know why? Because Broward County is really Democratic. Other parts of Florida are more Republican, but Broward County is heavily Democratic. So does that percentage match up with previous elections? That's an important question. If in other elections, Broward County comes in at 50% Democratic, and all of a sudden here they're coming in at 68 and 69, you go, whoa, wait a minute, that's a problem, okay? That's where are they getting these votes? Why is that so out of sync? So let's look at previous elections. Oh, look at that. In Broward County, in the presidential vote in 2012, 67% Democratic. Then in 2016, 66% Democratic, right along similar lines. And in the last governor's race in 2014, 68% Democratic, exactly where they have it right now. So coming in at 68, 69% in favor of Gillum and Nelson is exactly where you would expect Broward County to be in. So it's just a matter of when they count. It isn't like, oh, most of the votes coming, 7 out of 10 of the votes coming in are Democratic. Yeah, that's because it's Broward County. If it was a Republican county, 7 out of 10 votes would come in favor of the Republicans.
I didn't expect that live on the show you would prove that Democrats have been cheating in multiple elections going back many years.
If that's the case, then Republicans have been cheating in Alabama for a long time.
But don't you agree that we need to tell our candidates not to concede
in
these close races, because it does feed into a media narrative that's challenging for us. If you concede and then you unconcede, obviously it doesn't change the substance of every vote ought to be counted, but nevertheless.
Yeah, Joe, that's exactly right. There's like this mad rush for concessions. Like, oh, you have to say it right away. You have to say it, otherwise it's not civil. First of all, we're still having that conversation with President Trump in office about civility and how quickly you concede. Second of all, it doesn't matter. It's just optics. Joe's exactly right. In reality, does it have any legal force? No. Let's say that somebody won by 12 points, but they accidentally conceded. Would they be like, sorry, you conceded, the other guy's the governor? No, it means nothing at all, right? So, but I mean, especially in Florida, why would you concede too early?
Exactly.
And it only helps the Republican framing. Look, I know they're trying to do the right thing, But yes, these ballots oftentimes come in late, and especially in Democratic districts, they will very likely swing towards Democrats. In fact, on election night, we emphasized over and over again about Florida in specific. Go back and look at that tape, and you can if you're a member, tyt.com/join to become a member. You get all of our coverage, and you will see that I said Broward County has not come in. It has the lowest percentage of the vote that has been counted in Florida, and Broward County is the most heavily Democratic county, and so this race is not quite over yet. We said throughout the night. So when Gillum conceded with about 1 point, we assumed that it was over, that Broward had mainly stopped counting. As it turns out, they're really slow in counting. And if Republicans say, hey, they should have been quicker, I agree, they should have been quicker. If they say they should have been quicker, so let's just not count the votes. No, hell no.
And then there's a version of that, like saying, I wish that we were totally wrapped up on election day is fine. I wish historically that California was faster at counting votes. There's just some areas that aren't. But then there's a version of that doesn't make any sense. Rudy Giuliani tweeted that after the first county is done counting votes, no votes should be taken from any other county.
What
are you talking about? That's insanity. Then all you got to do is get one little rural county with 7 people and they just rush through and count it really fast. And then, hey, we got 100% of the vote.
Well, two could play that game if you want. We could do that in blue states or in all the states.
Madness.
Just hurry up and count any Democratic county immediately. In fact, invent a county of like 3 people. Okay, we all vote Democrat. That's it. The state's ours. Okay. Preposterous. I mean, they say that with a straight face on television, right?
Or as straight of a face as Rudy Giuliani can have. So why don't we turn to some of the assertions of voter fraud? As we show you this video, which is going to be of Donald Trump, I want you to look carefully and log all of the evidence provided for his claims as we roll this.
If you look at Broward and Palm Beach to a lesser extent, if you look at Broward County, they have had a horrible history. And if you look at the person, in this case a woman, involved, she has had a horrible history. And all of a sudden, they're finding votes out of nowhere. And Rick Scott, who won by, it was close, but he won by a comfortable margin. Every couple of hours, it goes down a little bit. And then you see the people, and they were involved with that fraud of the fake dossier, the phony dossier. And I guess I hear they were somehow involved or work with the GPS fusion people who have committed. I mean, you look at what they've done. You look at the dishonesty. Look. There's bad things have gone on in Broward County, really bad things. She's been to court. She's had a lot of problems. She's lost. I say this, he easily won, but every hour it seems to be going down. I think that people have to look at it very, very cautiously.
Okay, so I really wish that if you're a conservative and you're watching this, whether you think that he's being honest or whether you accept that he is lying and you don't care, wouldn't you want a president who's gonna put a little bit more effort into his lying? All he says is, if you look at this, if you look at that, bad things are happening. He didn't give any specifics whatsoever. Now, he did say they're coming up with votes. He has no evidence of that. They have votes, you can confirm all of them, and we, I'm sure, all advocate for a verifiable paper trail that makes it easy to confirm every single vote.
Whoa, John. I mean, look, man. Hey, if in Broward County all of a sudden we got magical votes, of course we want actual votes. It's preposterous.
Look at this tweet. So Rick Scott was up by 50,000 votes on election day. Now they found many votes, and he's only up by 15,000. The Broward effect. How come they never find Republican votes? Well, here is the thing. It sounds like about 32% of the votes they found have been Republican votes. It just leans Democratic, you moron. You can't count, there's no more specificity or evidence provided in a presidential tweet at this point than some random person who's gonna respond on Twitter when we post this video later on.
Let me offer the bright side. There's some who think that we're spiraling into an even scarier moment where Trump is being emboldened. I have a different take on it. I think this is an example of Trump actually being on the ropes. We won big on Tuesday, and perhaps on Tuesday night it wasn't so clear, but I think with the passage of a few days, it's clear that we won pretty well. And I think he's scared. And I think as he becomes more scared, he's gonna act more erratically. So I think there's an interpretation that we can all take from this that we're starting to win.
Yeah, so let me address some of the things that Trump said. He said they're getting the votes out of nowhere. No, not true. counting them. And he's like, they found the votes. No, they didn't find the votes. They're counting them. The votes were there the whole time. Now, to be fair, and look, we're not like the other guys. We don't make up stuff, and we actually care about what's right and reasonable and legal, right? So a judge just ruled in Florida, this is breaking news, that Broward County has to explain how many people voted, right, and how many they have counted by Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is, I think that's a perfectly reasonable ruling by the judge. I don't know if the judge is Republican or Democrat or appointed by Republicans or Democrats. I don't care.
Appointed by Jeb Bush.
Okay, that's okay. No problem at all. Okay, so Friday 7 p.m. when they voted on Tuesday, that's a long time. It's fair to say, hey, listen, we need to verify. We need a little bit of transparency here, or we need a lot of transparency. How many people voted? Now, if it was a Republican county, I would want to know how many people voted. And if they were holding the votes, if Chris Kobach was holding the votes and was like, I'm not gonna tell you, I'd be like, what, right? So no, they gotta let people know how many people voted and when are you gonna stop, when are you gonna finish the count? Those are reasonable questions. What is not reasonable is saying, they're just coming out of nowhere, the votes, they're popping up, right? And they're cheating. Wait a minute, Rick Scott is saying that there's fraud. Okay, then they asked him, logical next question, reporters asked, oh, that's amazing. What's your evidence? He's like, oh, I don't have any, but I don't know, they're taking a long time to count. No, that's not a thing.
Get ready, he's gonna make less and less and less sense as we put him more and more on the ropes.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, in this area, I would love, like, we didn't have a Secretary of State running in, controlling the election he's running in, but Rick Scott is deciding that, hey, I'm the governor, I can get involved if I want. I can send people down there. There's reports that Ron DeSantis is sending people as well. That's fine as long as they're not sending, thugs basically to intimidate the people into not counting the vote anymore. But theoretically, Donald Trump, he's a guy who admires dictators all around the world. Could he take a more direct hand if some of these races don't go his way? I don't know, but on Twitter, he did tweet this today. Just out in Arizona, signatures don't match. Electoral corruption, call for a new election? We must protect our democracy. So Kristen Sinema looks like she's gonna win at this point. So maybe to protect democracy, he needs to invalidate the results of an election. Now, if this was not America, if it was not Donald Trump, and you heard about that happening somewhere else in the world, what would you think about that development? Would you think that that's a good thing? And here, he seems to be indicating that that's what he wants to do.
Wait, would you like to do a new election in Arizona, Florida, and Georgia? Oh, you wouldn't like to do a new election in the places that you claim you won. Interesting how that works. So it's of course preposterous, but there's one more important thing here. And
what if we did a revote of 2016 right now?
Yeah, why not? I mean, look,
Can we do 2000?
Hey, Trump said there was voter fraud in 2016. He said there were 3 to 5 million illegal votes. I mean, that is unbelievable. That's way more than even the absurd allegations in Arizona or otherwise. Maybe we should redo 2016. It's not my standard, it's the Trump standard.
Let's do the primaries too, though.
Yeah. Okay, so now look, to both John's point about how little homework he does and to Joe's point about how frazzled he is, he's trying to connect the Democratic Senate candidate Bill Nelson's lawyer, Mark Elias, to Fusion GPS, who did the dossier. Now, are they really connected? No, Elias represented Hillary Clinton. So he's saying, since that lawyer represented Hillary Clinton, who commissioned the Fusion GPS thing, I'm gonna bring up the dossier out of nowhere and somehow connected to this case. That's a dossier that says terrible things about Donald Trump. If there was a dossier like that on me, I think I'd know the people who commissioned it. Instead, she's like GPS Fusion. That's not the name. Like, that's amazing. I mean, don't you care like that he's not mentally competent. Okay, I mean, if it was just one slip up, you say, oh, it's no big deal. People slip up all the time, I slip up all the time. But no, he doesn't do any homework, he doesn't do any preparation. And the GPS Fusion people are there. They're not there, they're not connected to this at all, and it's Fusion GPS.
Well, super fast, you also don't know for sure that he's not lying. He was asked this morning about comments made by Michelle Obama, said, I'm not familiar with it. So the reporter explained a little bit. He started to answer, and then he brought up something else Michelle Obama had said. He said he wasn't aware of it, but he was lying about it.
Yeah, of course. So last thing here, and this is the most important and serious part. So I'm gonna go to graphics 55 and 56 here. So back in 2000, they stopped the recount in Florida, famously so. 2 things happened. One, originally these thugs came in and started banging on the doors of people doing the recount down in Miami-Dade. They were also trying to threaten Broward County. So the same Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach were at play in the Bush versus Gore, Florida situation. And they made them stop the recount because of this mob that had formed outside of their offices. And then eventually, since they stopped recounting, they never got to finish the count. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in the most political decision in Supreme Court history, they literally said in the decision, this doesn't count for anything else. We don't want it to be precedent, because they knew that they were bending the rules to make Bush president. They said you should not recount Florida. Whatever you do, do not count the vote. Well, here, it's not gonna happen this time around, okay? We cannot allow that to happen under any circumstances. Currently, the Gillum race is under 50,000 difference. So what that means, 50,000 vote difference. That means a manual recount is legally necessary, okay? So they must do, I'm sorry, an automatic recount, a machine recount.
Machine, yes.
They must do a machine recount. The other race, Bill Nelson versus Rick Scott, is under 25,000. It's at 18,000 right now, vote difference. That means that a manual hand recount is legally necessary. They must do that recount. It's not a matter of our guy winning or their guy winning. If it is those thresholds, and if it was reversed and the Republicans said, hey, there should be a recount, and there's been other instances where we have said that. Yes, absolutely they should do a recount. So we're not gonna let him get away with it again. Here, let me show you the picture of 55 here of these folks that went down there and formed a mob to intimidate the people counting in Miami-Dade, and it worked. They stopped counting because of this mob. And then here's a famous picture of this same guys, the next picture, where journalists figured out who they were. And they were all GOP, turns out, not real people, not concerned citizens as they claimed. They were GOP lobbyists, consultants, staffers. It was a fake mob. And it was sent by the Republican Party to intimidate people into not counting the vote. That's not gonna happen this time. So if they start these shenanigans and they say, even though legally we must recount, we're not going to. Well, we can send people too. And we're not gonna be a mob, and we're not gonna do anything physical. But I mean, how many people do we need? Do we need thousands? Do we need millions? But we will show up if they do something outrageous and say that they are not going to count the vote. There will be hell to pay. That you should shake the rafters, okay? Not physical, we're not the right wing, we're not violent, but as many human beings as possible, surrounding as many buildings as possible, to say you will count that vote under any and all circumstances. Not recounting it is not acceptable under any circumstance. So I think I'm clear about that.
Let's go.
Well, right now though, there's nowhere to go because no one has said that they're not going to recount.
Yeah, but it's pretty far. We should start. It's like thousands
I
of miles.
think they've got planes. Eventually, they're going to do a hyperloop, right?
Okay.
Don't worry, we can get there in time. Right now, by the way, again, don't panic, guys. The process continues. It's fine. The judge ordered that they speed up a little bit. That's fine. Get more transparency. That's fine. If at some point, though, Rick Scott or the Republicans go, nah, who cares? Not going to recount, even though by law I have to. No. Then we're going to have massive, massive problems. Okay. All right, let's take a quick break. Donald Trump's clear law violations are still coming up, and so is the smear job against Bernie Sanders. We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Dan from Wisconsin wrote a long piece in the member section explaining why he became a member under tyt.com/John, so I'm not reading it. No, in all seriousness, guys, try to keep it a little smaller because reading really long ones are hard.
It's just hard when you're talking about, me.
Yeah.
Like how do you can't do it in 10 words? Come on.
Okay.
Send in more. tyt.com/John.
Okay, so in the competition of signing up members through our names, I had a lead for a long time. And against John, but Anna had been leading all throughout. She's still leading all throughout. We haven't closed much on her.
Has she gained a lot since?
Jimmy's gained more on us than we've gained on her. Let's put it that way. And Hassan's now coming up. But all of a sudden, we've got a new second place person. Here comes John Iadarola.
Okay. Wait. I got second?
You're in second, 135 to 120.
I didn't
138.
prepare anything. I didn't know this was gonna happen.
138 to 123. So being a Democrat, I will now concede. No, I'm kidding. No premature concessions for me. I demand a recount.
That's a
it is
pretty
within
big
the margin of error. I want a hand recount.
No, stop it. You can only count things from, I'm gonna say Connecticut and Texas, places I've lived.
All right, tyt.com/Cenk to join up. Okay,
and Anna's at 7,000.
This is an unacceptable state of affairs. Okay, losing to Anna is one thing. Losing to this guy,
Keep it up.
Okay, it's my theory is that Cenk is hard to spell. All right, already making excuses. You see this? Okay, when Joe gets into the race, Joe is very easy to spell. We're going to be in trouble. Okay.
Or we can do a write-in campaign if anyone wants to write in my name.
All right. By the way, when you sign up, you get all 18 of our shows, and members get a lot of other privileges. Behind the scenes during Election Day was amazing. Please check that out if you're a member. Okay, Cheryl writes in, apparently Trump doesn't understand the election process and mail ballots are arriving late. Epic fail, while I'm willing to bet that 2016 was the first time he ever voted. I remember the video of him copying Melania's ballot. That's right, I forgot about that. Remember he was like, there's some chance he doesn't know how to vote. It's unbelievable. All right, one more here. Tickety Boo writes in on YouTube super chat. Watching this from afar, it's admirable that you keep your sanity with this presidential buffoon. Well, we keep our sanity from time to time.
You should see us off camera. No.
Okay, well you can if you're a member.
That's true. / John.
Right in Joe.
It's not a thing. So we on the post game last night, Anna and I talked about how we keep our sanity, and we talked about her Hawaiian vacation a little bit too as well. All right. Anyways, we got to go. What's the next story, John?
Okay, I apologize. You're probably not going to find this story to be interesting.
Oh
okay.
yeah.
Bernie Sanders is being attacked for comments that he made during an interview with the Daily Beast, where he spoke at length about his belief that racism might have changed the results of major elections in Florida and Georgia. But there's one line in particular that people have an issue with, and oddly enough, that's the one popping up in all the headlines. So let's see if we bring up this first one. I think that's the Huffington Post. Bernie Sanders says not all voters who feel, quote, uncomfortable with black candidates are racist. And then I think this might be the Daily Beast. We'll bring up this next one. You're gonna see Bernie Sanders on Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams. Many whites made uncomfortable voting for black candidates. So look, he did say something like that, and he said a lot more. Here is an excerpt from the actual interview.
How difficult is it to be in that position when you have a midterm campaign led from the administration that is so heavily race-oriented and
why don't we use the right word? Not use the phrase race-oriented. Why don't we say racist? How's that?
Right. How difficult is it then? Is that what ended up with these margins?
I think so. I think that I was involved in the Gillum campaign. I think it was a brilliant campaign. I think he's a fantastic politician in the best sense of the word. I think he ran a great campaign, and he had to take on some of the most blatant and ugly racism that we have seen in many, many years. And yet he came within a whisker of winning. And I think, there are a lot of white folks out there who are not necessarily racist, who felt uncomfortable for the first time in their lives about, whether or not they wanted to vote for an African American. I think next time around, by the way, it will be a lot easier for them to do that.
So there at the end, you saw the line that every one of the headlines is focusing on.
So now that's taken a life of its own, people in the media criticizing him. How dare you say that it wasn't racist, except for the fact that you just heard the video. That was the original interview, that was not later. The original interview, he said, when the guy said racial, he said, no, why don't we say that it's racist?
And when asked if this is the thing that might have changed the margins, he said, yes, this is what may have made the difference.
Yeah, and so he made the unforgivable transgression of being nuanced and said maybe we could win over some of those people who voted on those grounds at some later date because they're starting to vote for or considering to vote for African Americans for the first time. Now, unfortunately, like they're a little late. Let's go. But that's exactly what Bernie's saying. We said on the night of the election, look, Florida and Georgia in particular were clear. And I explained many other races where the Republican did not say anything racist. And so when they win, those are on other grounds. It might be on economic grounds, it might even be on racial grounds, but they didn't say anything racist. You can't say it if it's not. But in those two races, DeSantis said the voters should not monkey up this election. A clear reference to Gillum. And that's not even a saying. Monkeying up an election is not a saying. He forced that word in there to refer to Gillum. In Georgia, they did voter suppression that affected 7 out of 10 people that it affected were African Americans. That action is even more worrisome than the comments. And that's why Bernie said in the beginning of the interview, why don't we call it what it is, racist? So if you're, like, I partly get the guy writing the headline wants to write something like eye-catching, and Democrats saying that those guys' actions being racist is not that eye-catching because most Democrats agree that it is, right? But him saying like, well, maybe we can get those people who voted in that way in another election as they get more comfortable voting for African Americans. They're like, aha, okay. So, but now it being bouncing around the internet with all different reporters and media claiming as if Bernie Sanders didn't clearly say it was racist when he clearly said it was racist. No, come on. I mean, look, I told you right away, as soon as the midterm elections are over, and you remember if you watch the show, me saying it clear as day, that they will immediately accuse Bernie Sanders of being racist. It doesn't matter. I said they'll make something up. I mean, how right was I? It is literally 3 days after the election, and it has begun. Even though it's counterfactual, you heard the tape yourself.
Yeah, look, I mean, and the thing is, honestly, like if going into that interview, his objective was to minimize the effect of race and to focus on other things, he could have done that. I think he has incentives in terms of his political strategy to do that, but he's an honest guy acknowledging that race is probably what threw this thing. And you can listen to the rest of it. He goes on to the way that Gillum campaigned. He says that he stuck to his guns in terms of a progressive agenda, ran a great campaign, but he had to take on the most blatant and ugly racism that we've seen in many, many years. So he keeps coming back to that. The only thing I'm gonna disagree on, like it pisses me off to see the headlines because I do believe whether these individual authors are part of it, one of the reasons this thing has become so big is because, like you say, they wanna take him down. Again, not necessarily the individual authors, but a lot of groups do. But I will say, in speaking with a number of people who are not a part of any of this, African American people that I know, they don't like that statement. And so I would, in the future, I would say it differently. He's being diplomatic to try to win those people over, but a lot of people that I've talked to think that that is a racist thing to do. If you go into a voting booth and you don't want to vote for someone because of their race, they think that that is racist. And so I would word it differently. I get in the context of what he is saying that he is definitely focusing on the fact that all of this is racist, but I would word it more carefully in the future.
Well, I think that two things can coexist. First of all, anyone who doesn't vote for someone because of the color of their skin is racist. In addition, to build the kind of country I hope we can build, we need to change the hearts of people who are currently racist. And it seems like that was the nuanced point he was trying to attempt to make. But as you mentioned, John, we should be clear that if someone doesn't vote for someone because of the color of their skin, that's racist. And we still want to change those hearts over time, though.
So let me say two more things about this. So I know exactly where Bernie's coming from. So I grew up in a Muslim family. I'm agnostic, right? But if somebody didn't vote, some white American didn't vote for someone because they were Muslim, is that bigoted? Well, by definition, it's bigoted, right? But do I give up on that person forever? No, there's tons of anti-Muslim propaganda in this country. And if they watch Fox News, they got brainwashed into that. Do I wish they hadn't? Of course. Is it bigoted? Currently, yes, absolutely. Do I think that we have a chance of reversing that propaganda and getting that person to understand that a Muslim American is also 100% American and that they are not any different than any other Homo sapien, right? Do I believe that we can begin to get people comfortable in voting for Muslims, blacks, women, etc.? Yes, I do. And I believe that's exactly what Bernie was saying. And it's not just my belief. Look, so the second point is, it's absolutely clear in that original interview, He said that it was racist in the beginning. Then he made the comment that's now theoretically controversial. And then at the end, John showed you that quote. I don't want to just breeze past it. In the same interview, at the end, he said, I think he ran a great campaign and he had to take on some of the most blatant and ugly racism that we have seen in many, many years. And yet he came within a whisker of winning. So he said it was racist 2 times in that same paragraph.
Yeah.
So it's not like taking that sentence out of context. Well, then it does him a great disservice because that is not. He wasn't saying like, "Oh, what's the big deal about people not voting based on race?"
I think he was giving folks who might not have voted for candidates of color because of their color too much of the benefit of the doubt. The fact is, if someone didn't vote for a candidate because of that person's skin color, that is racist. In addition, we shouldn't give up on trying to win over that person's heart in time, but we have to begin by honestly calling it what it is, which is racism.
Well, in the example you gave, so you said, what if a person didn't vote for someone because they were Muslim? Is it bigoted? Well, yeah, it is. But you wouldn't want to message that way because you don't want to turn them off. But if somebody asked you specifically, is it bigoted? You'd be put in a tough situation because you don't want to say that it's not because you believe that it is, but you don't want to say that it is because you don't want to turn them off. So you get put in a tough position.
I think we need to be honest about it, though, even if it perhaps frustrates the recipient of that message.
Well, and I
need
think
to call
that
racism.
if you read his interview, I think it is incredibly clear, including in his follow-up, which he gave. He put something on Facebook almost immediately after the criticism started. He has since addressed it several times. Sanders' spokesman insists those remarks were taken out of context. Speaking to NPR, Sanders said any votes Gillum or Abrams lost over their race were entirely due to what he called racist campaigns run by their Republican opponents. He says specifically, there's no question that in Georgia and in Florida, racism has reared its ugly head. And you have candidates who ran against Gillum and ran against Stacey Abrams who were racist and were doing everything they could to try to play whites against blacks. And that is an outrage, and we have got to continue doing everything that we can to fight all forms of racism. Before, I was just acknowledging that, again, some of the people that I talk to, these are not people who work for the DNC. Some of them are non-political, some of them are Bernie supporters. They just say that specifically in terms of that messaging, just you'll come up with a different way to say it, which he did the next day.
I don't even think it's a different way of saying it. I don't know,
but it's not for us to say. It's not for us to tell an African American person you're wrong to not like the way this is being said.
No, this is important, okay? So if they're coming at it genuinely and they saw the entirety of the quote and they say, hey, look, I get that he said it's racist in the beginning, he said it's racist at the end. In the middle, I didn't like the way he phrased it. Nothing wrong with that at all. I get it, that's the conversation we just had.
And that is largely the conversation that I had.
Yeah, right, that's right. So but I am seeing online people not doing that at all. They're ignoring the context and they're making it seem like Bernie Sanders, I don't know, maybe they didn't see the full quote. That is entirely possible, right?
Well, we showed you
And by the way, some of the reporters though, some of the people saying that are reporters. Well, I mean, you should look at the whole quote if you're a reporter. And so, I guarantee you now ahead of time what will happen. Everyone will forget the context and never ever mention it again outside of us. And everyone will pretend that Bernie said that the Republicans were not racist in those races, when in fact he said it twice, right? So I always think, what if it happened to me? What if the shoe was on the other foot? And if Bernie had said, hey, they ran this campaign against a Muslim American, whatever, let's say Abdul El-Sayed, who he supported in Michigan, and it was a bigoted campaign, and people that voted against him because he's Muslim, maybe they're not, bigots, but it was a bigoted campaign. I'd go, yeah, he's trying to win them over, right? And maybe at most it's an inartful middle of the paragraph, right? But he's clearly saying it was bigoted, but maybe we can win them over in the future. I wouldn't be like, how dare you, Bernie? Apparently you hate Muslims. No, preposterous, right? Well, and by the way, speaking of which, let's be absolutely clear. A lot of these Johnny-come-latelys supporting Andrew Gillum now and then trying to smear Bernie Sanders. Where were you when Andrew Gillum was in 4th place and Bernie Sanders endorsed him, supported him, went down there and campaigned for him 100%. When everyone else thought he didn't have a chance of winning, but Bernie was there for him?
Yes. And so to give you an idea of the angle of this that we're saying is more politically motivated, we showed you 2 screenshots, but you can find many, many more of those, and probably going off into the future. We just summed it up a little bit, but there is I'm not going to say coordinated necessarily, but I would not be surprised if there were some aspects of that. It was not long in many of these headlines suddenly popping up sort of suspiciously quickly.
Yeah, much more to come, guaranteed. And like I said, almost no one else in media will ever quote the context again. And so the smears have begun.
Well, and this is, I think, will get you ready for what is sure to be a smooth, clean primary in 2020. It will be an easy, fun, light experience for all of us.
All right, we got to take a quick break, guys. So we still, now the next story is the smear of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but we have got to get to Donald Trump's clear violation of the law. I mean, look, impeachable offense is the fourth in the rundown. But anyway, we'll be right back with that.